Good morning, Sharks. I'm Vojin, CEO at Vrtly, and I'll stick with the Shark Tank format. We're raising $5 million in exchange for 28.5% equity at Vrtly. We've already committed the first $2 million, so there's a little bit of room still left. Okay, and the problem that we're solving is really around in-practice advertising or in-practice marketing, largely because this is a part of the industry that hasn't been evolved in the last 10 or 15 years, and it's a huge opportunity. That picture there is from a practice that we know. This is largely what the industry is still doing. We're going in and putting print marketing materials everywhere in a practice, and at the end of the day, this is pretty ineffective. I shouldn't say it's ineffective. There's a purpose for it, but there's a better way to do things. It's cluttering up practices. It takes forever to distribute this content into offices. And most importantly, the brands can't measure what's being done once this stuff gets in there. So if you're lucky, this stuff stays on in display, but you're competing with 50, 60 brands in an office. This stuff gets ushered into, the back closet. And so there's got to be a better way to do things. If you get even deeper, there's been a lot of evolution in the top of the funnel inside of marketing and practice or in our industry, obviously with Facebook and and Google. But when you look at the bottom of the funnel, this is where 73% of all revenue in our industry comes from. And we're spending over $100 million a year as an industry to create print marketing advertising here. And really there's no insights into what's being used. So as a brand, there's no ability to see what content's being used inside of a practice, what's being used effectively. Do they have today's content or is it 2 years ago? So what we're doing is we're solving this by streaming ads directly into practice TVs with smart TVs and tablets. I'll pick up a little bit here. We're already in over 90% of the smart TVs. This gives a way better experience for practices and patients. It distributes in real time, so you can upload your content today if you're one of our brands, and it's across our entire network of thousands of practices. And you can see analytics, like which practices are using what pieces of content. You can see conversions now as well. So it's pretty exciting. How we do this at a high level, it's an ad network. You've got your brands that want to be inside a network of practice screens. But what we do that's very unique and makes us scalable is we're the only company that actually allows the practice to match with the brands that they promote. Surprisingly, no one's ever done this before, but it's critical because if you're a Cool Sculpting loyalist and you start seeing M-Sculpting ads being promoted to your patients, you're going to quickly throw that product out. And so we've solved this, and actually, because we're the first and only people to do this, we've actually got a patent granted that gives us this unique market advantage where the patient or the practice can choose which ads they're playing in the practice. So I'll show you a little bit deeper how this works. So inside the clinic, if I'm a physician, I get to go to a library of content, pick the brands that I actually promote inside of my practice, so I do get some control. And I can actually customize that further with my own before and after photos. We've made it incredibly easy for practices, and this controls the algorithm for the ad loop that plays in the treatment rooms, but also the consultation rooms. But furthermore, we've launched a new product called Vrtly Pro. This actually allows us to also control the consultation screens. And so what now we can do is practices can do this themselves, but also brands can go and take all of their digital or their print marketing tools and load it digitally into our consultation playlist. And so if you think of the flip charts and the consultation tools that we give to all of these practices, they can now access this just using a smart TV remote. It's that simple. So if you're a practice, patient's getting numbed up, and they see something and inquire about any product, you can just go to that consultation playlist, and you no longer have to flip through drawers to find those pieces of printed collateral. It's making a huge advantage inside of the clinics, and you can even actually convert patients directly into a scheduler. You can actually send them digital brochures. So we've made a lot of evolution with this, and it's working really well in practices. A couple of things, we're getting great adoption on both sides of the marketplace. When we look at practices, we're in a couple thousand practices already. We don't spend any money on marketing, and we're growing around 50 practices a month. So we're getting good growth there. It's all organic, word of mouth. We see a huge increase in activity from the practices. Primarily, we look at how much custom content they upload, so their own before and after photos, their own loops. We have like 20,000 pieces of content from the practices alone, which is crazy. So it goes to show there's a demand for this. We're also seeing 170% year over year increase in daily active users, so we know the practices like it. I've run into practices here just walking in today, and they tell me how much they like the solution, so I know we're onto something. From the brand side, we've created channels for pretty much every brand in the industry. We've got 3,000 pieces of content on there. We have about 50 brands logging in regularly and uploading content. we've seen a 30x increase in terms of the amount of content the brands are putting in the platform. So we're starting to get a lot of use, and I think that's really exciting because we're just, starting, and I really think there's a lot of exciting things we can do. Some case studies on the brand side. There was a case study done with Hydrofacial where they randomly shipped out Vrtly to 500 practices. Half of them adopted it for the most part, and what they saw over a 6-month period was the practices advertising using Vrtly were seeing an 83% increase in consumable sales, which is a huge impact. And Hydrofacial invested pretty heavily into making this work, but they got a great result. We look on the practice side. Dr. Jay Burns, who's well known in this industry, he actually does his BBL consults, and there's a set of tools that he uses. He can now go into any treatment room, pull this up just using a smart remote, and when he uses that consultation tool, he gets a 93% conversion rate. In the past, when he wasn't able to use that, he was getting a 60% conversion rate. So again, it's about making these tools accessible to practices at their fingertips. A couple other things. Why do we need the money? What are we doing? What's in our roadmap? We're commercially expanding. So today we're at 2,000 practices. That's a little typo. We're looking over to 2028. We want to be in 10,000 practices in aesthetics. That's our goal. We also want to expand into other cash pay healthcare verticals, but just to give a perspective, when we're in 10,000 practices, we have about $100 million of ad inventory available. So, we really just want to continue to expand this. We're a free product for practices. We do have a couple of add-ons that you can, pay for, but for the most part, we're free for practices, so we expect pretty quick growth. In terms of creating a total addressable market, it's hard to actually cap it because all of the cash pay healthcare verticals we can access. And really, we can go into ophthalmology dentistry without laying one more line of code. They have their own library and can move into those verticals. So we've got some exciting new people on the team, including Brent Saunders, who just joined as a board observer, who's excited to help us take this into dentistry ophthalmology. And, we have a really, you can recognize Aubrey's face there, so some known faces on the team as well. So thanks, Sharks. That's my time. Open to questions.
Okay, thank you, Vojin. Good job. I'm a little bit conflicted here, so I'll leave it to my fellow Sharks here to ask a few questions.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll start. Thanks for that. What do you estimate is the TAM for Vrtly specifically, and what is your take rate or cost per impression?
Cost per
impression that you're providing?
Yeah, so if you actually look at just aesthetics alone in terms of we kind of looked at it, if we took all the practices and offered our solution, it would be about a $275 million opportunity, right? And so, but if you start looking at multiple verticals, like when we start looking at dentistry, hair and beauty, ophthalmology, you start getting into the multiple billions. And like I said, we don't want to cap it there. That's the reason we didn't just use a pie, because it can get so big. So the addressable market is huge. You've got 50,000 clinics in aesthetics, and our unit economics, if you do a $30 CPM, is around $350 per clinic, $400 per clinic. And so, so there's a huge opportunity there. And just to give perspective on that as well, Patient Point is probably the leader in general healthcare space. There's a number of platforms that work in general healthcare. We've spoken to them. They've never been able to get into cash pay because of this inability to customize for the clinic. But they're doing about $300 million in revenue at 40,000 practices, and and again, just expanding in general. So there's a lot of room there. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Speaking of customization, is this system, is the clinic able to customize it to the patient in the room, or is it like a general customization of what the clinic offers?
No, it can be fully customized in the room and a general customization, so both ways. And there's a number of ways for that. Just at the highest level, it would be, you have a smart TV remote, you can go and, so if you're going for a specific product, let's just say I have a patient coming in for body contouring, I can actually create advertising playlists for body contouring. Or if I want to cross-sell, because I have let's say a Botox patient coming in, and I know I want to sell injectables, I can actually just, with one click of the button or 2 clicks of the button, move it over to my my filler advertising loop. So it's very customizable on the fly. That's actually one of the recent launches we have with Vrtly Pro, is the ability to control the screen with your smart TV remote, but also it's a lot more customizable if you want to log into the platform as well. So there's on the fly customization as well.
But there's no patient privacy. There's no patient data being shown on the TV.
No. I mean, from a clinic perspective, there's none of that. But what the clinic can do is the clinic can upload their own customizations of photos. So what we typically see already is if somebody's loading Allergan content, they want to put their own before and after photos. But again, that's all the same stuff they regular show, and there's no patient privacy issues whatsoever.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Vojin, great presentation, Vojin.
thanks, Aruna.
Can you comment a little bit about how much actual use and customization that happens inside these practices based on who they are? Are they a plastic surgery environment, med spa environment, or a derm environment? Just what is the real-world use of
Yep.
that by users?
Okay, yeah, so we have, 3 groups that we really look at. We look at specialty groups like plastics or surgery practices, and then you have your dermatologists, and you also have your med spa kind of group. We were getting the most growth in med spas. Right now we're getting a lot of specialties that are starting to join our platform. I think it just gets, word of mouth with that, primarily because of this Vrtly Pro customization that's allowed us to get into treatment rooms. We're seeing a lot of plastic surgeons and dermatologists very interested. So that's where we're seeing more of our growth. A couple of other interesting things that we're seeing is from our current install base of 2,000 practices that are active, we see about 10 to 20 new screens added every day, which is showing that practices are saying, let's stick another TV in the treatment room because of how this is working. So we're seeing a lot more happening in the treatment rooms, and that's primarily at the specialty levels. I think most broad application that every practice uses is just a general advertising loop. I mean, they offer so many services in these clinics, and they want people to know what they offer. And so they create an easy, customized ad loop. But now being able to go in there and create these playlists, because we're at the early end of that, it requires a little bit of planning on the behalf of the practice. So it's more the specialties doing it. But this is the reason why, starting at ASAPs, actually, we're inviting in all the brands to create all their own playlists. Because now, if that's all preloaded, now the practice just go in there and either use the preloaded stuff from, let's say, Allergan or Galderma, or they could go in there and actually just make quick edits, like I'm going to upload my own before and afters, throw my own logo over top. And so some of the trends that we're seeing, like I said, is just a lot more activity in the treatment room, particularly from specialty practices.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, great presentation. It very compelling. The numbers seem compelling. And this will be a comment first before I ask the question. I have that terrible feeling that I've seen this before. So maybe technology has improved, and broadband and AI and personalization, but I have that terrible feeling I've seen this before. So my question in that context, what is your exit strategy? I mean, you're going to get your $100 million, 10,000. Do you want to stay inside, or do you want to sell it and before technology changes on you again?
It's a really good question, and I think you first have to give yourself optionality as a business. And so I would actually say, first off, you have seen technologies like this in the sense that people are trying to take over the TVs. I mean, the whole world is moving to digital advertising, right? Bus stops, billboards, all that stuff. So we're just digitizing in an industry that always seems to go a little bit last on some of these innovations. But at the end of the day, nobody's done it in our way because, again, nobody has given the practice the ability to say, I'm not playing that ad. And surprisingly, nobody's done that before. So I think we have a strong advantage. Our goal as a company is to focus on aesthetics first, try to get good penetration here. The second, we actually have really good signs and we're comfortable to expand. We really do, again, bring in Brent Saunders, who's at Bausch & Lomb CEO, on the team, was to help us get into ophthalmology, dentistry, and some of these other verticals. So I'd like to take this very broad, because when I look at something like Patient Point, that's a multi-billion-dollar company and is really just running infomercials in general healthcare, we could license this technology to general healthcare for, Checked Up or one of their competitors to try to get a strategic advantage. I mean, I'd like to take this a long way. And so I've been fortunate enough to have an exit with Aubrey at HintMD. And so I think you always have to, just assess how far you want to go and what the options are. But most important is optionality. We see profitability in about 18 to 24 months, just because it's not a really high overhead business. And so we're focused fully on that first and making ourselves available to scale into the other fields. And then, in terms of exit, just one last thing on that. Obviously, there's PE and stuff like that would be interested, but also these players, we've already met with Patient Point, primarily because they're running out of general healthcare practices to go after, and cash pay has been largely unavailable to them. And so I actually think that there's a number of strategics that would be excited to come and take us out. They've already expressed that. So I think there's multiple exit opportunities. I think this is just a business that kicks a lot of cash as well, so it can be pretty exciting to run. And